It's time to talk LSU baseball with Mike Scarborough and Kendall Rogers of D1Baseball. This is Batter Up.
All right, another week of Batter Up. Kendall Rogers in the house. Of course, this is the week that everybody's been pointing to. Third week of the season. LSU's heading to Rice. Get their first loss last weekend with Stony Brook. Stony Brook's kind of a dirty word over here in Baton Rouge. But first Rice tonight. We'll see who gets to start there for the Tigers. No word as of yet. We're recording this at 2:30 Wednesday afternoon. And then, of course, Friday night in the Astro Foundation Classic. Kendall's going to be there. LSU in Texas, 7 o'clock Friday night. ULL, 7 o'clock Saturday night. And then Texas State in the afternoon on Sunday. So welcome in, Kendall. What's up?
I'm doing pretty good. You know, it's kind of funny, just, LSU fans over the weekend, just on my Twitter feed, talking about, already kind of getting a little antsy about the season. It's early. And what I'm looking forward to kind of this week, Mike, is the fact they're taking a step up in competition. I think better competition breeds kind of better results in some instances. And I do think there's an element of LSU so far that has kind of, I wouldn't say just coasted a little bit, but like they know the stakes are a little higher this weekend. And I think you're going to kind of see that in just the intensity level with this team moving forward.
Well, I'm looking around the rest of the SEC, and of course, you didn't want to pounce on anything after week one. I don't know how much you want to pounce on anything after week two. Although I kind of look at the Mississippi schools, and I'm wondering what the heck's going on over there. But that said, I think like we talked about last week, Jay's going to tweak the lineup. He's going to keep moving guys around. A lot of people want to know who he's going to start Friday night. I think he's got a decision there because a lot of people want Thatcher Hurd moved to day two.
Yeah, there's no doubt. I mean, the thing about Thatcher Hurd, and I didn't see his whole start over the weekend, but I mean, 8 strikeouts over the weekend, but also just 4 1/3 innings. Did walk 4 guys, allowed some runs. So, what that tells me is that he certainly is not as crisp as he was in the last year. And, last week we talked about how, you can't draw too many conclusions from opening weekend. Well, now we're kind of getting to the point after 2 weeks where it's like, okay, if he start, stats wise, not a great start over the weekend for him. And so what that constitutes now is kind of a small trend. And so I think it's really important for him and frankly for the Tigers for her to throw really well this weekend, just from a confidence standpoint. And I agree with you. I think from a confidence standpoint, I think maybe it would benefit him to get off that Friday night roll where, it's not to say he's soft or anything like that, but like just some guys don't really relish that role of being the Friday night guy, whereas some guys are better off being Saturday or potentially even Sunday. And I think maybe he's one of those guys that just, from a comfort level and from a stuff level, maybe it helps him comfort-wise to start on Saturdays. And also, by the way, maybe it really helps him to be able to kind of see the other offense in one game before he actually faces them. Sometimes that really helps a pitcher too. But I like that idea. I actually like moving him back in the rotation a little bit.
Yeah, because everybody's excited about what they've seen from Luke Holman so far. And
well, I mean, with him, it's what you see is what you get. I mean, I think you and I talked about that in the first pod of the year, but like he is what he is. Like he's not going to throw 97, but he's going to pound the zone for the most part. He's going to sit low 90s. He's got pretty good off-speed stuff, and and he's, by the way, he's pretty good. So I think, especially when you're beginning a weekend, you want to begin the weekend and set the tone. And I think Holman right now is probably the best tone setter for LSU.
Well, I'm going to be real excited, next week going forward because you're going to get a steady dose of LSU all weekend.
Absolutely.
Of course, all those schools. And, of course, you were out of town watching a lot of baseball last weekend as well. So I think as each week goes by, you're going to have a lot better feel. But certainly this past weekend, one of the guys we talked about last week where people kind of scratch their head a little bit was Michael Braswell at shortstop. And I'm going to be curious to see what you think after this coming weekend. What's funny is, of course, we're brought to you by attorney Kenneth P. Haines. And I asked Ken if he had any questions for you because he's sponsoring and paying the bills. And he said, no, but I will have some after next week. And another guy asked the same thing. A lot of people are saying, look, we'll see what after this weekend really where the big questions are at, or what might be the struggles the rest of the season. But I think at shortstop, you know, is it Milam, or is Milam going to push him there, because he's getting a lot of reps and he's performing very well. And I think one of the things that was the knock on Braswell was how good might he be at the plate. He was getting hammered a little bit, and then as soon as people started really laying into him, he hits a home run Friday.
Yeah.
We're going to see how this plays out, I think, and it might just be where they both play a significant number of games the entire season.
Yeah, I mean, first of all, I mean, when you look at Braswell, like he was a solid defender for South Carolina last year. He wasn't very good offensively. So I think any kind of massive surge that we expected offensively, what I kind of expected out of him is like 275, 280 with maybe a few jacks. I mean, I honestly was not expecting Jordan Thompson numbers out of him. So, you know, he's below where I kind of thought he would be. But would it surprise me if he hit 260 with 6 home runs or 7 home runs? Not really. I think Milam is really one of the big surprises for me with this team so far, because at least offensively, because you know in the fall when I talked to Coach Johnson, you know Jay was telling me that you know he was in the mix, but you know he's kind of behind some guys and whatnot, and the fact that he was kind of behind some guys in the fall, and from an average standpoint, he's leading the team in hitting right now. I would not have predicted that on January 1st. And so that's actually kind of been a big surprise for me, how good he has been offensively overall.
I'm sure you're going to see him this weekend. Obviously, the strength of this team has been pitching.
Yeah.
And I'm going to be curious to see if you get what you think of Fidel Uyaha. I know I'm butchering his last
Ulloa?
Ulloa.
That was a really bad butcher job, by the way. I've done some bad ones. That was pretty bad.
Well, you know what I did? I actually spelled it out, and I've been saying it right. And then when I read it, I got it wrong.
It's Ulloa, right? Ulloa?
Yeah, you got it right.
Okay.
Ulloa.
Okay.
I think it's the LSU pronunciation guide on their website is bad, and he actually said it.
Yeah,
he said it for us 2 weeks ago, but everybody's loving his mustache.
Well, it's funny. It's funny you mentioned that. I'm gonna actually Google his name while we're on here. But there was a couple of weeks ago. I was on a radio show in Lafayette. And we were talking about LSU and obviously the Cajuns. And one of the guys we mentioned was a guy named Louis Felipe Langevin. And like I butchered that's still butchering his name, by the way, but that's his full name. And like it was, the way you say that is like a real French name. And like I butchered the absolute hell out of it. And the host was just laughing so hard. I was like, can you tell I'm from East Texas and not from Southern Louisiana? So
yeah.
I can't say much.
By the way, I've been after you, and every week we're getting comments on our YouTube channel. People are wanting your D1 baseball hats. They like the one you're wearing right now.
We're going to make that happen. We're going to make that happen. I was talking to KP, Kyle Peterson, last night about that we're getting a lot of requests for our hats. This one's a good hat. The better one's though is the baseball.
I like the D1. So. That one's nice, but
I'll take care of you.
Yeah, I think y'all can sell a ton of those. People.
Yeah, I think I'll be over there for potentially the Florida series. If I am, I'll bring one for you.
Awesome. So what are you? I'm sure you're doing a pre-notebook for this thing for D1Baseball.com. Yeah. But what are some of the things that you're looking forward to? Not just the LSU game, but what are some of the storylines going into this Astro Foundation Classic? And by the way, they're talking well over 10,000 LSU fans could be there this weekend.
Oh, I think 10's probably being light, buddy.
Some people say as high as 20. I don't know if it gets there.
Dude, LSU had probably 12 or 13 there 2 years ago, and that's not coming off a national championship. I'll tell you what I'm looking forward to. In the same vein, I'm looking forward to just seeing how LSU stacks up against better competition. I'm also really curious to see how Texas does this weekend. Texas last weekend with kind of LeBaron Johnson leading the way on the mound. They did not allow a run in 3 games against Cal Poly in Austin. Granted, Cal Poly is not very good this year, but I don't care if you're playing Catholic High in Baton Rouge. Not allowing a run in 3 games is pretty impressive. And so, obviously that's not what I'm expecting this weekend, but just how, LeBaron Johnson, the Friday night guy who's got a really good breaking ball, his fastball's going to be up to 95, 96. How he does against LSU's lineup is going to be really interesting to me. I think, looking at the other teams in that field, LSU is going to play the Cajuns on Saturday. I don't know what in the world happened to them over the weekend against Rice. I mean, Parker Smith is a really good Friday guy. J.D. McCracken appears to be a really good Saturday guy. But, I mean, Rice's pitching just absolutely shut them down. That really shocked me. I know they lost Julian Brock and a few others, but the fact that offense got shut down was surprising. We'll see if they can kind of elevate their game this weekend. I know LSU doesn't play Vandy, but, Vandy's a really interesting team for me because, they've got Grayson Carter, who's up to 103 last week with his fastball. Command is not always there. As a matter of fact, his command's there about 30% of the time. But, I mean, they've got really nice arms. Offensively, they seem to be a little bit challenged, withstanding last night's result against Indiana State where they won 20-4. But outside of that, their offense to me has a lot to prove. But they've got some really nice arms. So, it's going to be a really interesting weekend. Houston's a club that, LSU won't face this guy, but, Jackson Jelkin, their Friday night guy, is one of the better newcomers in the country. If you're there on Friday, make sure you check out that game because, he'll be up to 94, 95. He's going to be a top 2 or 3 round pick. He's a really, really talented pitcher. Then Sunday, you said I didn't even look at the full schedule, but that LSU faces Texas State. I actually saw them over the weekend. The biggest thing with them is you jump on them early. Again, in the Romark Classic I was at last week, they really struggled out of the gate on the mound. That put them behind the 8 ball quite a bit. That's why they lost 2 of their 3 games. But the third game, I tell you what, they've got some decent starting pitching, and the result was them, crushing Washington State. So, really good offensive lineup. Ryan Farber, a freshman for the Bobcats, is one of the better freshman hitters in the country. He's really exciting. Augie Ramirez, their backstop, can hit for a lot of power. So, again, you keep those 2 guys under control for LSU, chances are you're going to have success against them.
Well, certainly LSU fans in Houston, and particularly the guys who are just baseball fanatics, are going to sit there and watch a lot of baseball, not just LSU, but also keeping an eye on Vanderbilt because they come to the box the first weekend in April. So that's going to be very interesting. A team that LSU doesn't have on the schedule this year, but faced in the Super, I think you saw last weekend in Kentucky. What did you think of them?
Yeah, they were interesting. I think offensively they're going to be really good as the season progresses. They've got Emilian Petre back, who obviously was a starter for them last year. Ryan Waldschmidt is back from an injury. I felt like when they got him back from an injury over the weekend after Friday's game, they were kind of a different team offensively. Mitchell Daly, a Texas transfer, has gotten off to a really nice start at a Grand Slam over the weekend. I have questions about their pitching. I think if you look at UK's arms as a whole, to me it's not elite level pitching. But that's kind of who they were last year, right? I mean, they got to a super regional last year without elite pitching. And so I think that's kind of the bar for them again this year. I think they can get to super. I don't think they can get to Omaha, but, we'll see what happens. It's early.
Well, I keep sounding like a broken record, but I was really impressed. I was impressed with Kentucky last year.
They play hard, man. They play hard, and they're what I kind of consider them as. It's strange because I don't think they're like ultra dangerous offensively. But they don't do a lot of they're not going to run themselves out of the inning, and they're not going to have bad fundamentals. And when you have those 2 things, that's typically the recipe for scoring some runs.
All right, well, let's hear from Kenny Haines. He sponsors this Battle Rock segment each and every week.
Kenny Haines is a proud 1989 graduate of LSU Law School with a passion for justice. Kenny stands out as the only lawyer in the state, board certified in both appellate practice and family law. Drawing from 34 years of trial experience, Kenny has navigated the most complex aspects of real people's lives. If you need help in Northwest Louisiana with a family issue, legal issue, or a highly skilled trial attorney, call Kenny, 318-222-2100. And speaking of winning, Kenny would like to recognize our 2023 national champions and congratulate coaches Kim Mulkey and Jay Johnson. Go Tigers!
All right, Kenny, thank you for that. Kendall, going into this weekend, what's been like the first 2 weeks for you guys when y'all? I'm assuming y'all meet on Sunday nights, or how do y'all do your top 25 rankings? And has there been anybody that you've moved more drastically than others up and down that top 25? Even though I know you guys don't want to get too critical this early, but
yeah,
has there been anything that's been really staggering to y'all that y'all are scratching your head on?
Yeah, that's a great question. I think South Carolina for me looks a little bit better than I expected. They're pitching at a high level. They've been very offensive. I like what I've seen from them. Campbell, I know they lost their midweek game to Coastal, but they've had back-to-back really good weekends. They took a series from UCSB opening weekend, who I think is going to be really good. Uh, Dallas Baptist would be the other team for me. Dallas Baptist, we talked about, talented arms earlier. They're really balanced offensively, and their rotation is loaded. They've got an absolute ace in Ryan Johnson on the front end. He's an All-American type of arm. And then their Sunday guy, Jared Elwinger, a freshman out of the Houston area here, was up to 101 opening weekend. Your Sunday guy up to 101. So Dan Hefner's got a really good team there. I think as we look at the top, I look at Wake Forest and I look at Arkansas, particularly Arkansas. Pitching wise, they look great, right? Higgins Smith 17 Ks last week. Brady Tiger really good on Saturday. Offensively, a lot to be desired for the Hogs. I'm very curious to see how they do offensively moving forward. And the one team for me, and I don't think LSU fans will be too surprised by this, that I'm a little bit skittish on them, is Florida. I just don't feel like Florida's played very well the first 2 weeks. And I get it. That's kind of Florida's MO, right? They always start the season like you're thinking like, oh man, they're not going to be very good. Then all of a sudden they kind of figure things out. But I think Florida's lineup from about the midpoint to the bottom is right now like below average, and their pitching has just been okay. It has not been great. So when you have that combination, that's not typically a great result. Thankfully for them, they haven't played great competition, but they do go to Miami this weekend. Who again, Miami's not going to be great this year. That's a rivalry series. It's JT Arteaga, Miami's new coach. It's his first time to have Florida at home. Miami will be jacked for that. So I think we're going to learn a lot about the Gators this weekend down at Coral Gables.
How much do you read in, and what is your take on just Georgia and Alabama, two teams that are undefeated right now, 8-0 and 9-0?
Yeah. I mean, my take on Georgia is Charlie Condon is absolutely ridiculous. I mean, if you look at what he's done offensively, it's been extremely impressive. Let's see how Georgia does against a good team. I'm skeptical until proven otherwise. Alabama, what's been interesting to me with those guys is, TJ McCants, the Ole Miss transfer. Sometimes it's kind of the old saying, like sometimes, a different scenery kind of brings out different results. And I think for TJ McCants, he's always been an electric defender, or at least electric in terms of speed out in the outfield. But offensively at Ole Miss, it was kind of a roller coaster ride. He's been really good for Bama so far. Bama's been touched up with a couple of pitching injuries, but for the most part, Rob Vaughn has done a tremendous job with that team, and that doesn't surprise me at all. He inherited talent, and by the way, he's a really good coach when you look at what he did at Maryland over the last few years.
I keep saying I'm gonna be curious, but I am gonna be curious about how much we see Gage jump this weekend, going back to LSU. And before we get out of here, anything you want to add about what you've seen in LSU, what you've observed? I know a lot of it, your eyes in a bunch of different places and noticing box scores and anything else that you want to say about what you've seen from LSU so far.
Yeah, I'll tell you what, real quick on the mound. I mean, I'm with you on Gage jump. I want to see a little bit more length out of him. Overall, he's been very limited. I would like to see him get more than 2 1/3 inning in an outing. So I'll be very curious to kind of see him. And, Cam Johnson, I don't know how much we'll actually see him at all this weekend. I'm guessing we may not even see him this weekend. He has just not been very good overall. I mean, clearly an electric arm, but he's a guy that as like an outsider, when you have a supremely talented arm like that, I really hope he gets it together, because he's really exciting. He just needs to kind of, command the zone a little bit better. But overall, man, like I'm just expecting a different vibe at LSU this weekend. I think it's actually a blessing in disguise that they played Texas in that first game, because, there's not a lot of love lost there, right? And if you're LSU and you're Tommy White and you're Travinsky and Jared Jones and all these guys, like, you want to play well in that opening game, and certainly against those guys. So I think we're going to see the best version of LSU to date this weekend in Houston.
Now, tell us about D1Baseball's coverage. You're going to be there. What all do you have? I'm sure you've got previews leading into it. Guys, also, I implore LSU fans watching this, go to D1Baseball's YouTube channel, subscribe. they're doing live shows almost every day. They're doing daily wrap ups. I see Heath doing those. A lot of college baseball content on their YouTube channel, but you also need to go to D1 Baseball and subscribe. Loads of college baseball material there, and certainly they've got a big, nice emphasis on the SEC with their expanded staff at D1 Baseball.
Yeah, so I'll be there all 3 games for LSU this weekend. Obviously, I have a lot on the Tigers. You know, if you go to our site right now, you can see advanced stats on every single LSU player. You can go see synergy leaderboards, which is whiff rates, chase rates, and things like that for pitchers and hitters. So yeah, man, we are the one-stop shop, and I'm looking forward to seeing a lot of purple and gold in the stands this weekend.
All right, Kendall, another great episode of Batter Up, and we'll talk to you next week. Have a great time in Houston, and of course, it's an easy drive for you. And
Absolutely.
I'm gonna be I can't wait to see how many LSU fans show up. That game Friday night's going to be lit. It's going to have.
I won't be impressed until they run out of beer on Friday.
Yeah, and that could happen.
It could happen. It's happened before.
All right, Kent, talk next week.